Hi, I'm Marisa Rockford, and in this presentation, I will be discussing the last Yellowstone eruption. I chose this topic because after reading about Yellowstone in A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson, I wanted to have the opportunity to learn more about the topic. First, to start off learning about the last Yellowstone eruption, a little background information is necessary, such as what is a volcano and what are the necessary conditions for them to erupt. A volcano is a rupture in the Earth's crust that consists of molten lava and the spreading of ash that arises from within the Earth. Suitable environment for a volcanic eruption is anywhere that the Earth's magma successfully breaks through the crust or comes close to doing so. This is common on active fault lines where tectonic plates meet. There are two main types of volcanoes: shield volcanoes and composite volcanoes. Shield volcanoes are less steep than what you would typically envision a volcano as in your head. This is because these volcanoes are basalt, which means their lava is more fluid and runs quicker. These volcanoes are only explosive if water is introduced to the eruption. Composite volcanoes, also known as a stratovolcano, are formed in a tall cone shape. This is the type of volcano you probably imagine when you envision a volcano. Stratovolcanoes are less active than shield volcanoes, but when they do erupt, lava is explosive and produces deadly effects. Now that we know a little bit about volcanoes in general, let's talk about Yellowstone specifically. Although most people assume that Yellowstone is just a large national park with geysers, it actually is basically a giant volcano. Yellowstone Park sits atop a volcano that spans 3,741 miles. Although an eruption is unlikely, park visitors are always technically at risk for the entire park to explode at any moment. Now that you have a little background information on volcanoes and why they occur, it is important to know a little history of Yellowstone, more than just the fact that it is a volcano itself. Although this presentation focuses on the most recent eruption, the previous eruptions provide useful information as well. The first Yellowstone eruption occurred 2.1 million years ago. This eruption covered 5,790 square miles with ash. Because Yellowstone dates so far back in time, rocks from the Precambrian era can be found distributed throughout the park. But Yellowstone itself was formed thanks to volcanoes and faulting during the Cenozoic era. Now that the background information and history has been covered, it is time to get into the real purpose of this presentation, to discuss the most recent time Yellowstone erupted. The last time Yellowstone erupted, 640,000 years ago, it affected a very large portion of the United States. As you can see in the image provided, the ashes that occurred along with the explosion spanned miles and miles away from where the actual volcano lays. Ashes spread even as far as central Missouri. As a result of each eruption that occurred at Yellowstone, there has been an accompanying caldera. A caldera is a large crater that is formed when the mouth of a volcano collapses after eruption. Yellowstone currently has 3 caldera that overlap each from a previous eruption. These caldera make the basins that the park resides in today. It is due to the magmatic heat from the last eruption that powers the geysers of the park that explode on a daily basis. So how did this last eruption affect the Earth's terrain? When this eruption occurred, the world was just finishing recovering from an intense ice age. This eruption stopped the natural process of global warming. With the eruption came a time of reduced lighting, which began to lower temperatures again. with the large amounts of ash that covered the land, resulted in the death of most plants, which also starved animals and possibly our earliest ancestors. If another eruption occurred today, it is believed that it would cause a nuclear winter. Although there has not been an eruption since the last one, 640,000 years ago, there is a lot of activity that occurs at Yellowstone. Because the land beneath Yellowstone remains extremely hot, the land above frequently reacts. There is many places where visitors can view magma that continues to flow within chambers in the ground and geysers that explode hundreds of feet into the air due to the pressure of the heat below them. There are few areas on Earth that consist of a geothermal ecosystem, and Yellowstone is one of them. So what does it mean to be a geothermal ecosystem? A geothermal ecosystem is usually a hot, steamy, and muddy area that has a special chemical makeup. The land usually also consists of very hot bodies of water that support organisms that only exist in these areas. Although these evolved organisms can exist in the conditions normal plants cannot. The maximum temperature tolerated by plants is 45 degrees Celsius, so some plants may be found close to the runoff of hot springs, but cannot exist on the actual border. Once some plants do discover a way to grow, patterns begin to form in circles around the hot parts of the land. Because of the unstable land that Yellowstone sits on, earthquakes frequently occur. Although these are usually small, some major earthquakes have occurred, warning observationists that Yellowstone could be preparing to erupt. Although these have all been false alarms so far, it is never a good idea to ignore possible warning signs. Some earthquake patterns have occurred which suggests seismic slip on the boundaries of small upper crustal blocks, which tells scientists that there could be substantial movement in the magma underground. Because Yellowstone has such an important history and future, it is important that the land is well managed to preserve this ecosystem. Workers at the park take special care to keep track of the animals and plants throughout the park and make notice when changes occur. In the most recent inventory taken, there is a substantial drop in animals from the previous count, and due to climate change, the park's open season lasted almost 30 days longer, which may be putting too much stress on the park's structure. It is important for these things to be noticed so that everyone, not just the workers of the park, can make better decisions for the environment to preserve pieces of land as special as Yellowstone. For a few more things about Yellowstone, here are some fun facts. Yellowstone was established on March 1st, 1872. Yellowstone is the world's first national park. The park resides in 3 states: Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Old Faithful, a geyser, erupts every 92 minutes. There are more than 300 active geysers. Yellowstone has 1,000 to 3,000 earthquakes annually. Yellowstone has more than 1,800 archaeological sites. There are more than 290 waterfalls at Yellowstone. Yellowstone has not erupted for more than 70,000 years, and although an eruption will eventually come, it probably will not be for a while. And when it does come, experts believe that there will be months of activity to warn of its forthcoming. What will happen to the United States when that eruption occurs is another problem, one that could be detrimental to the landscape of the country.